for us is to go to the community, have our public meetings in the community. We first had our meeting in here, and to be honest, it was, it didn't, personally, and I know a lot of our, it wasn't a good, I never felt comfortable in this space. It's quite intimidating. You kind of feel it's the dragon's den kind of thing, and then you're asking the public to come to, you know, a lot of our communities in South Auckland, West Auckland, to come all the way here, pay $20 for parking, and then, you know, find their way in here, and then sit at the back there, and then we expect them to give some sort of effective, constructive feedback. So it's a setting, and there's already barriers and obstacles that are already in place. And then you can, so for us, we're looking to, exactly what you said, there's mechanisms in place where we're looking to partner with the local bodies, the local the local boards as well, and not reinvent the wheel. They already have initiatives, they already have events, and so for us just to piggyback onto those events and to add that element so that we can communicate a lot of the advice that we're obviously giving back straight through the council, and then communicating it back out to the community itself.
Great, thanks. I congratulate you on your work program. It's comprehensive.
Can I also, I just want to acknowledge the council officers too. We've had the cross-panel, it's been integrated panel sessions, and we've looked at community engagement, and so there's some really good plans that are in play, I mean, that have been put forward, so watch the space.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I love it. So look, no further questions, just and again acknowledge, sorry. Yep, Councillor Darby.
Thank you, and thank you. Lovely to see you here. Are you confident that there is a vehicle for your advisory panel to come before this committee and other committees to offer advice, and that pathway to this committee is unobstructed? It is clear that you can come here not just on this annual basis to approve your priorities and focus areas, but to actually convey your advice, which is what you're set up to do, to those that might be making decisions on matters critical to you?
Thank you. It's a great question. I think that's a key thing that we've been speaking as a team as to how do we get past the red tape and things to ensure that the notions and the things that we're going to put forward are actually heard in the right forum. We understand there has to be red tape at some point for certain things, but for us, it's going past this annual basis, and as I alluded to earlier, where I said we're very deliberate, very specific with what we're looking to focus on, it's ensuring that when we have our monthly meetings, that the people that are put before us, that we're advising to, when they give their feedback, are the right people, are the people that are influential in the right space, they can actually hear what we're going to be speaking on, and that way it will feed back into this forum. So for us, it's not just having a standard, and no disrespect to some of the other council representatives in here, but not having those that are there just to hear us out after they've already made the decision or after they've already had a feedback session, but it's having it, timing our engagement is another key thing. It's the timing of the engagement, because sometimes we come midway through, they've already had an engagement process, they've already had feedback, and then we kind of come near the middle, when if you had asked us from the beginning, we would have told you how to engage. We would have said, this is the best way to try and engage these various communities, and that would have allowed for a better platform for a lot of this, these programs and initiatives to come to fruition.
Yeah. Can I just say, yep, Mr. Chair, just on that, a question of probably of the staff is, we have the way our reporting template is set up, we have a section on local board input, we have a section on Māori input, but we have advisory boards, panels, and then we have the City Centre Advisory Board, which I'm utilising much more effectively in the Planning Committee. I think the reporting template needs to reflect that we do have advisory boards. At the moment, the template doesn't reflect that, and I think provides the channel, a formal channel to inform this committee and others, and it won't be all the time, but it'll be on the priorities and focus areas. And I think it would be very helpful to at least investigate
Yep.
in the reporting
So
template.
Councillor Darby, this is why Kim Austin, who is our principal advisor to the panel, this is why he, Austin, sorry, this is why he's come up here. So, all yours, Austin.
Through the chair, thank you very much for the opportunity. So just to complement what Ralph had to say, also I just like to let you know that it is at the chair's discretion of all the committees in Auckland Council that you can actually call for panel's presentations on issues relevant to diverse communities. So you can always call for their input at the committee meetings. Also at the same time, in terms of template, as part of the consideration, there is a Maori impact statement and local board input. That those sections have been added as part of the mandatory, because that's as part of the legislative mandates, whereas advisory panels are not legislative bodies. But at the same time, council staff members can always add the panel's input after their engagement with the panels as part of the consideration. So you can always reinforce and suggest to staff members to consider panel's input as part of their report writing process.
Can I just, very brief, I don't want to take your time. Mr. Chair, and thank you. I think it might be worth us considering formalising it on the report, because as a chair, I know how much pressure there is on understanding the material in front of you, trying to get to grips with gaps, but invariably you don't ask the question, where is that advice from that panel?
Okay, well, yeah, so we'll take that on board. And it's been read. So, Councillor Cooper?
Yeah, just,
sorry,
Taylor Falava, just,
I want to talk about that issue.
Okay. Well,
and I know you've talked a lot about, sorry, is it me? Sorry. Hi. We've talked a lot about engagement, and I agree, you've got to take it out to people where they are and be, have them comfortable. Because I'm a Westie, no one will be surprised that I'll ask this question. So, of course, you'll be doing a lot of engagement in the south, but will you be doing engagement out west as well?
No.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I can confirm that I too am from the Promised Land, West Auckland. Ranui hard, so Ranui Te Aratu, these are crucial areas. So I can confirm hand on heart that West Auckland, the Promised Land of Auckland, will definitely be delivered. So it's okay.
Speaking to my heart.
Don't worry about it.
You've just made Councillor Cooper's day.
Anything else happens, it won't matter now.
And I think you were saying it's in regards to the template.
Yes, so if you just mind my indulgence, just in response to Councillor Darby, mind you, I think I also live in the Promised Land. We have a political advisory board or quality advice, which is looking at the templating. You would have had a recent email from me, I think yesterday, on update, and I'm happy to look at that as an item to be discussed via that channel.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Look, I think that's it. So look, thank you so much, and good luck with the work program. And yeah, good luck.
Thank you, everyone. Te lava.
So we'll just our Rainbow Communities panel, please.
Just in time. It's quite beautiful. I love that.
Tēnā rā koutou katoa, and I'll get the Rainbow Communities panel to introduce themselves, but I just want to acknowledge the co-chairs, Jules Radford Popard and John Kingi. Tēnā rā koutou katoa, and our lead officer and deputy. Kia ora, and I'll just leave it up to you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, Deputy Chair, Councillor Alfilipaina, and committee members. It's for this opportunity to present our work plan today. It's a real pleasure to be here today, particularly with the Pacific panel and some members of the ethnic panel, and our newest panel member, Phoenix, who's in an important. As Al said, my name's Jules Radford Popard, and this is my colleague, John Kingy and we are the co-chairs of the panel. And we're really proud now to have 2 years under our belt as the newest panel, not so new anymore, we can't really use that. But we'd like to begin, because we want to take the opportunity, just to share a few highlights with you. It's been really inspirational, I think, to realise the potential of genuine diversity by bringing together 11 panel members across diverse sexuality and gender identities. And whilst it's not always smooth, and sometimes it's not even easy, the outcomes that I think we've reached when we work for common goals across diversity is profoundly rich. Other highlights, recent highlights, include the all-gender toilet signage in council properties in the central city. And this allows people who are often invisible in our communities to be seen and to be safe. And we really thank Auckland Council and you for your leadership on this across local government. The panel's authored engagement guidelines for council to inform how we effectively work with rainbow communities, and we're already in the process of our first review. We've engaged with numerous council staff, government agencies, including recently corrections and the police, and we've been given an opportunity by the police to influence training for new recruits. We're extremely excited about that. And of course, really importantly, directly with our own communities. We've provided strategic advice on council plans, including the refresh and the Auckland plan, and others at a more operational level, including seeing rainbow communities included in the homelessness strategy for the first time. A really important inclusion, as we believe up to 25% of young people are told to leave home when they share their sexual and gender identities with their families. And our focus of the last 2 months has been on understanding what's important to our communities. And John's going to share our work plan priorities and discuss the report we commissioned, which we understand has been made available to you.
Thanks, Jules. Kia ora koutou katoa. Mr Deputy Chair and councillors, members of the committee, it's a real pleasure to be here this morning to share with you some of the priorities for our work program. The priorities that inform our program came about as a direct result of an engagement process that we contracted Sissy Rock, formerly a council staff member, to engage with, and she led a team of committed and engaged rainbow community members, H. Mikado, Sam Orchard and Tony Duda. And over the past 2 months, they have worked with the panel, Sissy and her team, to engage with over 200 members of our rainbow communities across Auckland. And they've developed the 3 questions report, which I believe is available in your papers. Those findings and the recommendations and priorities that came out of that report have guided our priorities in our work program. The engagement process involved a campaign that Sissy led, and we believe that there's a video that has also, we're about to play. So that video sort of launched the campaign, and we thought we'd show that to you now.
This is Auckland. This is a rainbow. These are some rainbow Aucklanders. This is Auckland Council's Rainbow Communities Advisory Panel.
We are creating a picture of Auckland's rainbow communities,
where we are strong and flourishing, where our challenges are,
and where we need some support.
We are a huge community with a range of voices, experiences, identities and abilities.
And we all have different cultures, ideas, values and dreams. And we want to hear from you. We are asking every rainbow Aucklander just 3 questions.
What are your dreams for Auckland?
How can council help achieve this?
If you could change one thing about Auckland tomorrow, what would it be? This is you. This is you clicking on the website or sharing the video. Thank you.
Ngā mihi.
So that video was created by Sissy and her team, so it was completely created and produced by members of our communities. And alongside that video, we had a survey, a website, engagement hui, and also we provided an opportunity for members of our communities to run their own huis in small groups, and we would provide them with some financial support to run those hui. And we found that that was a really unique and collaborative way to engage with our communities. We received the finalised report very recently, which you now have, and the panel out of that report resolved to prioritise 3 of the themes for the current year. So firstly, a safer Auckland for our communities. Secondly, affordability and security of housing. And finally, rainbow-friendly spaces, events and venues. These priorities, we hope, will help the Council plan and design a safer environment for our communities to maximise their daily lives and activities. The priorities are obviously not only the purview of Council, however, and will require effective coordination with central government agencies to collaborate on these important social issues. Homelessness, for example, which I think is a major issue at the moment, is a severe issue for our communities, particularly young and transgender members of our communities. And also mental health, where rainbow young people and rainbow people in general are more likely to self-harm and to suffer mental health-related injuries. The panel supports and will seek to advise the governing body and the committees on the Council's approach to these important agendas, and also to collaborate with initiatives with central government where appropriate. Outside of the priorities, the work plan also outlines the major areas that the panel will offer its input through the Auckland Plan Refresh and long-term plan consultation process. We know that our role is to advise, and that can sometimes be difficult for people who are community advocates, not to just sort of go out there and wave the banner. But we are committed to engaging in a collaborative approach to work with you to provide a broad range of relevant advice. I just wanted to mention finally that the report identified not just the key priorities that we've outlined in our work program, but also several things across a range of areas, from housing to transport and healthcare, safety and visibility. And as I said, the 3 areas that we've prioritised for the current plan are only some of those. And while the report was initially just meant to be an internal document that informed our engagement process for the work program, we've actually come to realise that the document can provide a voice for our communities much more broadly than that. And we hope and envisage that the report will actually be released publicly to the wider community, and that in that way it can act as a mechanism in and of itself to drive change for the people that we represent. So now Jules, I think, is going to provide a summation of some of the challenges. Kia ora.
The panel is excited about the rest of the term and what Auckland Council can achieve with rainbow communities and the panel. And as John said, we also face some challenges in getting really tangible quality outcomes for our communities, and we want to share just 3 of those with you. The first is that we have a chronic underfunding of rainbow organisations. Most rainbow organisations, not-for-profits, including Auckland-based Rainbow Youth and Outline, receive no contractual central government funding. And we really need council coordination with central government to ensure these vital agencies can function and support rainbow communities. Secondly, it is in the shadows that discrimination, stigma and violence thrive. Auckland Council has raised the visibility of our community significantly, and we need this to continue. Rainbow communities must be visible in council strategies, and especially, we believe, in the really strategic ones, like the Auckland Plan. We want and need to be in the sunshine. And our third challenge, and Ralph talked about this a little bit, is to ensure that the advice of our panel is meaningful and useful, both for council and for rainbow communities. We are conscious of ensuring we always give really high quality advice, but we want to avoid the risk of turning into a focus group. And this is an area I think we can do more work on. And lastly, we want to acknowledge the incredible support and advocacy that's wrapped around this panel. Councillor Casey, Councillor Hill, the council team, Austin Kim, James Hassel, Kalinda and Liz Enor. They are passionate, they are super talented group to be working with. And we're really looking forward to implementing this work program during this term, and we thank you for the opportunity to present to you today.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Tēnā kōrua. Just going to hand it to James and Liz, just if there's anything further you wish to say. I'm then going to invite Councillor Hills as the council for the Rainbow Communities Advisory Panel to say a few words. Then I'm going to open it up for questions.
I have nothing to add. They've provided a very good summary of what the panel's trying to achieve. The one thing I would emphasise, though, is that the panel is focused on providing advice to the council as a whole. They're very clear about that, and they welcome the opportunity to engage at every opportunity with anything that's likely to impact on the rainbow community as a whole.
Kia ora, James. Liz?
Through the chair, Councillor Alf. Yeah, I agree exactly what James said. I concur with what Jules and John were saying, and it's a really amazing opportunity to be involved as Deputy Lead Officer for the panel, and especially as a member of the Rainbow community myself. So, thank you. Awesome. Kia ora.
Okay, Councillor Hills.
Kia ora.
Just open comments.
Yeah,
and
kia ora, Deputy Chair. Thank you so much for the great presentation. I've really enjoyed the last year so far working with you all, and I think especially the consultation document and what's come out from it, most of it is around how we can make our services better for everyone, but obviously as the whole purpose of the advisory panels is to get the information from more vulnerable communities or people that might be adversely affected by things such as not being visible on forms, not having things to fill out, feeling discrimination when you jump on a bus, or anything throughout our council services. So it's been an eye-opener even for me, working in the youth sector and working with Rainbow Youth a lot. I thought I knew everything, but actually hearing lots from the different parts of our community, I've been hearing a lot more how we need to make Auckland more inclusive, and just, a lot of it is quite simple stuff that is just, making the city a lot better, and a lot of it is not about cost either, so it's fantastic. But I just want to say thank you for being passionate and making sure you're getting people around the table. I think although not so council related, the corrections conversation was quite an amazing one, but also maybe a model for some of council's work, what they're doing in corrections right now and how they've changed their model to be much more inclusive, and they're seeing really positive outcomes out of that. We could take that on in some of our departments too. So thank you so much.
Look, I'm going to start off the questioning and then it'll be Member Blair. But look, congratulations around the community engagement project. Now, my question is, what you've developed here with the staff, obviously, and the Rainbow community, the template, and we were mentioning templates earlier, the template that have you got any issues with the other advisory panels sort of looking at it and saying, hey, look, we could actually use this to develop what you have with this project? So the question is to our co-chairs, what your thoughts are in regards to that.
Oh, anyone and everyone is very welcome to use that, and we can talk to them, but also we can put them in touch with the group that came up with that. Yeah, we'd love to go wide and far.
Awesome. Member Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tēnā koutou katoa, kia koutou. Tō rōpū e whakarite ana tēnei kaupapa. I'm here to kia koutou. Just like to say that I must like to acknowledge the presentation and congratulate all the people that have worked behind the scenes and and would like to acknowledge you for that. In particular, the affordable housing seems to be a very common theme amongst all groups. Safety and transport, or that you're facing, and safety in the public, so in particular. And I just had a kind of a query on whether identity and being Māori, if you've done any work around that, and how, I don't know, whether they have isolation from their marae or hapu, and whether that factors into any of the issues that you're finding with regard to Māori in the Rainbow communities.
Tēnā koe. We've definitely, we find, particularly being Auckland-based, that we're dealing with urban Māori who traditionally have been sort of disassociated from their papakainga. So, I mean, within our communities, we've recently, myself and Dave Hutty are new members to the panel this year, and we were specifically selected as Māori Takatapui members for the panel. So for us, it's sort of been getting our feet under the table, so to speak. But one of the conversations that we're wanting to engage in is what our relationship with the treaty looks like, and what that flows on to in terms of how we engage with Māori within our communities. It can be very difficult, primarily because when we're talking about rainbow communities, you're talking about intersectional identities. So, you know, it really depends on how people themselves present, whether they identify more within the Māori sphere, whether they identify within the rainbow sphere, and how the two sort of intersect. But I think that's a conversation that our panel is definitely looking to expand, not just within a council setting, but also as a general conversation within the community as a whole.
Well, the invitation's open to come to the IMSB at our meetings to present if you so wish. Thank you. One of the kind of general issues that rainbow communities face is a real lack of research, and particularly Takatapui. Yeah, there's a real call, both central and local governments, to, you know, to get more research, and not just for the sake of researching, you know, because often resource follows that, and so that is a beginning point for us. Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Okay, look, I just from myself, I make no apologies for the time we've spent talking to our advisory panels, because they come to us every 6 months. So it is important that we basically acknowledge and at least honour you with having the time that we have for this particular part of our agenda. So make no apologies. I'm going to ask Councillor Casey, who is the liaison councillor for all the advisory panels. She will finish off this particular item. And Councillor Casey, if you would move the recommendation.
Absolutely delighted.
Councillor Hills, if you could second that, and then I will put the recommendation. So Councillor Casey, and then we'll put the recommendations. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you to the Chair and to my fellow councillors for giving the panels chance to have dialogue, because it's a dialogue that's really important. It's putting a face to the names. We've got a fantastic diversity policy, but our panels are diversity in action. You can hear that today. They are competent, they have lived experience and networks within their demographic group. That's what we as councillors need. We need you. And so this is a great forum to just build that relationship. Just like to say thank you to not just the chairs and the deputy chairs who are here today, that's Ralph and Lingy and Jules and John, but also to the staff who have given up their time readily. In this case, it's James and Liz and Louise and Nathaniel for the Pacifica panel. Not just that, though, it's a group effort. The councillors, Richard and Alfie, who are the liaison between the council and the panel, play a really important role. So thank you also to you to give up your evenings to do this. And the admin staff who keep the wheels turning over with the emails. Again, this is done on top of the jobs that they do for the council. So what you have here is a committed group. That's why it's successful. It's people like this who have the smarts, who have the lived experience, the network, and the fun, which is not a lot of what we get here at council. But if you ever take the chance to go along to one of the panels, you'll see it's really enjoyable. It's a giving back to the community. So I thank you for that. And just to say a couple of things about the impact already that's been made by these panels is extraordinary. In particular, the Rainbow panel, you're here before us today. The language we use has changed because of you. We're about to see all-gender toilets throughout the building up at Albert Street and over in Bledisloe, thanks to you and your advocacy. I know that you're about to build up a photo bank of pictures. Absolutely essential. A picture speaks 1,000 words. Thank you for what you do. And for the Pacific panel, I long for greater Pacific participation in our civic events. That's one of the best things you can do, is get your people here making decisions. Thank you for what you do. So just to say, that's it. I love my job doing this, the panels. I love the job. I get to go to all of them.
Thank you, Chief Liaison, and I will now put the recommendation that's been moved and seconded, and again reinforce the thanks that have been made to all our advisory panels. So, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you so much. Item 10, I'll move the item second, just to put on the table for discussion.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Cashmore. Deputy Mayor. Sweet. And anybody else up there with you? Now, not that I think you. Oh, there you go. Just want to welcome both, and Doctor, for those that may not know who's up there, can you introduce them, please?
Chair, yes, beside me we have Phil Brown, who heads the biosecurity team, and Imogene Bassett, who's been working on this, the regional pest management plan, the draft of it, or the proposed plan for consultation for most of this year, actually. So it's been a big package of work for her.
Okay, so look, I'm just going to hand it straight over to you, Doctor, and all yours.
Thank you. It's not driving.
I'm just, is it
not on? Oh.
Hold on, we'll just. Thank you.
Oh, there you go. Okay. No? There we go. Great. Sorry. So I've just got a really quick presentation just to go over the really the process issues around this. So those of you who have been in previous workshops on this topic will have seen this this slide a number of times, but just to sort of refresh where we are in the process. So we've had some pre-engagement with yourselves and with the wider community. And so the last time that we came to you was a workshop in October, and so at that point we had the direction from you to bring the totality of the options that were on the table for the proposed plan to today's meeting. What we're asking for today is to sign off the draft plan to go to public consultation next year, aligned with the long-term plan. So today's decision is not a budget commitment, it's just an opportunity to put this plan out to public consultation. That will be aligned with the long-term plan consultation, and then there'll be an opportunity after the long-term plan budget decisions have been made for us to look at the feedback from that process, the budget that we get, the feedback that we get on the details of the pest management elements, and then an opportunity to make revisions to the plan as required to meet that budget envelope and to take into account public feedback. And then, depending on how extensive those revisions are, we look to probably have an operative plan coming to you for adoption at the end of next year. And we recognise that some of the timelines around this have been a little bit challenging, but just to emphasise that really the pressing need for us to be here today is because we do have a requirement under the Biosecurity Act. So if we don't adopt a proposed plan before the 17th of December, then we'll be in a situation where our existing plan becomes non-operative and we will have no enforcement powers under the Biosecurity Act until such time as we adopt an operative plan. Whereas if we can put out a proposed plan, then that essentially puts us into a sort of a holding pattern where we then have as much time as is required to settle on what is a satisfactory new operative plan. And so that's a really important point, because if we lost those enforcement powers, it would have some significant impacts on some of our council programs. And then my last slide is really just to summarise what it is that we're asking you to approve today, recognising that the report that's in front of you is quite complicated, and that's because the Biosecurity Act is a very long and convoluted piece of legislation. it does require us to make a series of quite complicated steps and resolutions in a sequential format. So, but essentially what we're asking for is to approve a proposed plan to go out to public consultation, for you to acknowledge that we have complied with a number of steps that are set out by the Biosecurity Act, which are in one of the attachments that you have. And so largely that we are satisfied that we have complied with all of those process requirements, with the exception of Section 72, which requires public consultation. And so while we have done some consultation to date, the public haven't actually had an opportunity to see the detail of the proposed plan itself, and therefore we cannot say that we're satisfied with respect to that particular section. So that's recommendation E, that we recognise that there is some further consultation required. Please. And then lastly, there is a particular attachment that relates to pest-free warrants, and that's because we're proposing to incorporate that by reference, which is just a special method that the Biosecurity Act provides for, which allows us to have a more dynamic living document outside of the plan itself, but it does require a recommendation in itself to satisfy that. So that's really all I had in terms of a summary, and I'm happy to take questions as required.
Thank you, Doctor. Look, all the hands are sort of shooting up. We'll just leave that particular sort of on there because it just explains all our recommendations, except for G. And G is, if you've read it, it's just getting myself and Councillor Hulse, who's on council business, around C40, and just to give us any required minor editorial changes. So I've got Councillor Sayers first, Walker, and then Councillor Casey.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Right. Just a couple of questions. First one's around the consultation process. I just didn't pick it up in the literature. Would that include going up onto Shape Auckland, as we do with other documents? Yes, it will. We're working with the long-term plan team to make sure that this is aligned as possible with the broader long-term plan consultation. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And my other question was just specifically around the wallaby eradication program, and particularly probably the implications on Kowau Island. I think you probably picked up feedback from me at the workshop, and I understand from the local board as well that that community is probably a little bit divided. I don't know if it's 50-50. So, but I guess it's just that my question is, are you aware of that situation on Kowau Island and expecting that feedback in your consultation material? We're absolutely aware that that is definitely an issue which does polarise some members of the community, and which people do feel very strongly about it. So certainly we would see this opportunity for public consultation to be a really important opportunity to see whether there is a mandate within the community for that piece of work. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And just a final question, Mr. Chair, just still related to that. In the report, it's on page 60. It's got some words around Kowau Island that the wallabies pose a risk to the mainland. So I'm just curious, you don't have to give me the answer now, but if the question does come up about the number of historical times that perhaps wallabies have got onto the mainland, to what extent they've penetrated into the mainland from Kowau Island, and how often? So I think, Phil can correct me if I'm wrong, but from memory, we've responded to about 3 reported sightings on the mainland in the last year or two. Obviously they don't swim, but people do move animals like this. We know further south from Auckland, wallabies are an increasingly problematic species. They are really spreading quite rapidly and with high impact. And we do know that often that is aided by people deliberately moving them beyond their existing range. So it's certainly true that having a population on our doorstep does pose a risk of deliberate human movement. Right, yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problems at all. Councillor Walker.
Sure.
Question.
Yes. Around consultation, I note that this regional pest management plan is going to go out in tandem with the council's long-term plan. Are you proposing that people will be able to make a single submission that will effectively cover both, so that somebody that's making a submission on the regional pest management plan and covering off the numbers feeds in directly to the long-term plan? Is that the case?
I believe so, yes. We're working to make sure that those consultations are as aligned as possible so that people get one experience.
Okay, and the other question I've got, given the complicated nature of the plan, there's a number of volumes I've got here.
Indeed.
Given that there are likely to be some pests, like, say, Chilean needlegrass, carry dieback, some others that are particularly prominent, are you going to have a facility where it's going to be much easier for people to go to those and perhaps have a link that goes to the relevant parts in the plan?
We hadn't thought of hyperlinking to specific species from it, but we could possibly investigate whether it's possible from our summary document to do that. I can't speak to the technological possibility of that, but I can certainly take it to the comms and engagement team.
I would just make that recommendation, because otherwise you could be going through some hours trying to sort stuff. I think there's a priority around that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's right. Councillor Walker, and noted. Thank you. Your suggestion. Councillor Casey.
I've got two questions. The first one's on cats and the feedback on cats. Would you like to say something in summary about the feedback?
Obviously, we recognise that cats are a very polarising issue again, but we think that what we have is something which is very much in line with the feedback that we've had from the public and from local boards and other stakeholders through the process to date, and we've tried to balance people's rights and the value of domestic cats with managing the impacts of cats in high value areas to protect native species. So we'll be interested to get further feedback on that.
Oh, I'm sure you will get further feedback. My second question relates to, it's just a puzzle to me, and the board supported it too, but how do you stop the sale of pest species from nurseries and, say, Trade Me and people's back gardens? Just tell me the mechanism.
So we have the ability to do enforcement inspections under the Biosecurity Act, so that's part of the powers that we have under these plans. So we're able to enter a nursery establishment or a pet shop and have a look to see what it is that they're selling. We can also monitor online trade as well and follow up on that.
And can you just remind me about the 13 pest animal species that you've listed?
The species list?
Yep.
Oh gosh, that's...
I can.
It was 11, it's gone up to 13. I'm wondering what's been added.
I did as well, but I failed to print it.
So the proposed species of animals that are currently traded as pets that are proposed for ban from sale: bearded dragons, Canadian geese, eastern rosellas, eastern water dragons, galahs, goldfish.
No. Sorry.
Goldfish.
Sorry, we are proposing to add goldfish as a pest, but outside of containment, so it wouldn't ban sale, but it would just give us a mechanism to remind people that as part of responsible pet ownership, it's not a good idea to dump your unwanted goldfish into the local waterway.
Hence my upward intonation there. I need to read the other columns as well as the header column. Hedgehogs, Indian ringneck parakeets, magpies, monk parrots, rainbow lorikeets, red-eared slider turtles, snake-neck turtles, and sulphur-crested cockatoos.
Thank you.
What's really excited turtles?
Red-eared slider turtles.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said really excited turtles.
Some people do find them exciting.
Okay, sorry, Member Brown. Sorry.
Really excited.
So how does the plan advance us towards pest-free 2050?
it's very aligned with that kind of step change in the sense that we're looking to prioritise small mammal eradications on offshore islands and also landscape scale possum control across the mainland. So it is looking to that step change kind of space of where are the next big things that the country really is moving towards.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, is it not in alignment to the national?
It certainly does, yes.
Thank you. I'll just reserve this. Yeah. Oh, no, sorry. So, why are we not... At the last meeting, I'd raised it over the issue with the proposed 1080 drop to Hunua, insofar as that being, for us, as Māori, terminology is a big thing. So, in that example, the new approach is eradication, given the national shift from, say, the 2014-15 Māori impact statement and consultation stuff is a bit different today than it is, or it was back then, and appreciate you talking to iwi. But I'm just wondering why or at what point, you know, the term eradication can be included and bolded so everybody can see it, because control and management are ongoing issues around where's the end point. So maybe it's a question for the committee around.
And we'll put that question as in what I'm assuming you're asking is around including the word eradication or eradicate in the actual name alongside either before or after management. That's where we're heading. So we'll open that discussion after any questions. I've only got one more question. Then we'll open up into comment and debate. Yeah. So I'll just get through the question and then we'll open it up, because I think it's a point that needs debating around the word eradicate or eradication in the name. Imogen, did you want to say it now until we, or after we?
Well, I'm happy to comment quickly, and then if you want.
We're still going to end up bringing it forward anyway as part of the discussion.
Okay. We'll go.
Councillor Newman.
Hello. Dr. Bassett, with respect to cats again, the Council's response, you referred to cats will be defined as pests if they are not able to be identified as being owned by microchip or accompanying registration of the New Zealand Companion Animal Register. Now, I know the focus here is on the high biodiversity value area, including council parklands and offshore islands, but are you ready for the response from the community in relation to the kind of approach there in relation to cats, because there is a high premium on the value of the domestic mog? I think it's I think that the way in, I can understand the value proposition here, but I don't necessarily believe that the community itself is going to fully appreciate that, and the best communication strategy under the sun is not going to allay all concerns. So we're ready for that, because I think that that's something that's going to really flavour the forthcoming discussion on this document.
We certainly take your point. We are aware that there is some potential for some strong media interest in that and community interest in that. We are obviously working with the communications team to make sure we manage that as well as possible. We have had a small amount of media on this issue off the back of this coming to local board reports, and so
more
far,
coming.
yeah, but so far it has been reasonably positive, and we do realise that there's a balance to be struck, and we hope we can manage it as well as possible.
One of the questions that will come through, I won't make a comment, Mr. Chair, but one of the, you may want to respond to this, one of the issues that will arise will be how practical is the issue of the chipping and the identification, the registration process, given the number of cats and the way in which owners feel about them. They're treated a bit different to the dog.
Yeah, and look, I think microchipping is increasingly being recognised as a best practice pet ownership behaviour. We know in the last 5 years between reporting intervals that actually nationally the proportion of cats that have been voluntarily microchipped anyway has risen from, I think, maybe 11 or 16%, yes, maybe, yeah, something like, or maybe 7%, so quite low numbers back in 2011 is now up around a third of cats are microchips because people are recognising that this is beneficial to their cat. They get their cat back if it gets lost. And so I think there's an increasing acceptance. This is actually quite an easy, good thing to do as a cat owner, irrespective of issues around the biodiversity.
Yeah, this is why it's important that it goes out for consultation. So look, there's no question, yep. And then I'm going to open it up around Member Brown's suggestion, which I recall that we had the discussion about earlier.
Yep. Thanks, Mr.
Councillor
Chair.
Cashmore, Deputy Mayor.
So, guys, well done on preparation of all this. It's very aspirational. The question that has to be asked, though, is your budget's increasing massively over threefold, potentially. So how are you going to counter over-enthusiastic expectations?
Look, this will be going out with the long-term plan, and I guess it is Aucklanders' opportunity to to signal where their preferences lie. But yeah, we do need to be realistic about the fact that there is a likelihood that this will need to be revised following decision on the budget envelope.
So I note you signal that in the report quite well about the 10-year budget. But will you be putting out the consultation document what are, say, people's priorities, or a second potentially deliverable or third deliverable for people to actually ascertain? Because what we see in the public is they don't often join up the dots. Everyone wants a perfectly weed-free world, except when it arrives in their rates bill. So how are we going to make sure people join those dots together?
Well, clearly there's some challenge there, and it will be very interesting to see what the Mayor's proposal comes forward with, because this is going through the LTP process, and we've put up a fully costed option, and we've also put up a much more modest investment option, and so I guess it'll be up to the Mayor and yourselves to shape that.
Perhaps if I might just add that the situation we're in, and I think it says it in here, is that under current funding we're actually into managed decline. So that's the situation we are in. It is quite difficult to commit to what do you really get for this amount of money in the environment space, because it doesn't quite work that way. And this will be something that through the consultation process we will need to address as to what can we do if the funding is less than the amount that's set out here for this proposed plan, and we will then have to go through a process of revising the plan, reprioritisation and so forth. It's not an easy exercise for those reasons, but what the point you raise is clearly noted, and the team is very well aware of the issue there.
Thanks.
Okay. Questions before we end up debating the eradication?
It was just a question. Probably. Oh, okay, maybe it's a comment. So it's fine.
Okay. Cool. So look, let's go back into. It's been moved in second. Sorry, Councillor Walker. And look, I'm just going to get into Member Brown. I'm just going to invite yourself again in regards to the comments around your suggestion.
Yeah, first of all, don't have an issue generally with the recommendations and support our Deputy Mayor, our Council's interest around the 350+% increase in the budget. I'm certainly going to join the over-enthusiastic community on some ideas on how that can be properly and responsibly invested on the matter. So the matter's not a showstopper today, but inevitably for some future committee it is, because management at the year 2040, 2045 is going to run out of time. And I know intimately that external to the community that at least 4 mana whenua who are involved in the 1080 discussions in Hunua are committed, and I understand with council officials, to somehow addressing the terminology to move it towards eradication, using that as an example. And so for the life of me, I can't see why the Hunuas out the southeast is going to have its own little show going on when it could be compelled by a greater regional policy that doesn't accommodate it, at least in terminology. So not a showstopper today, Mr. Chair, but inevitably for some council committee they will face this question because our council officials are going to run out of management time. And I'm not saying let's all jump in and be over enthusiastic today. Well, okay, I am. Thank you, that's all I've got to say.
Okay. So, Member Brown, in regards to, as the report around number 3, national policy direction and eradication, are you suggesting that maybe the word could be included in the regional pest management and eradication plan, or I don't know, this is... Imogen?
So, I mean, I would say that in some sections of the plan, we are quite clearly stating an eradication outcome. So, for instance, for Kawo, for Waiheke, we are talking about eradication for multiple small mammals. I do hope that in the long term, someone will be sitting here talking about eradication of, for instance, possums, rats across the whole region. But at the moment, from a technical point of view, what we're proposing and what we're really actually technically able to deliver at this point is not eradication in all instances.
And I accept that, but I'm hoping you'd accept that inevitably what I'm talking about is awaiting a future official and a future committee.
And we do see this as being a step on the path towards that long-term outcome for some of those species. Yep.
Yes, so on that then, and it's not for today, but there's obviously going to be some form of KPIs to measure those models, sites and stuff to achieve those outcomes. But again, and I'm thinking in the over-enthusiastic community, we achieve those. And then the next natural human thing to do is find the next place to continue to emulate that success. So why on earth wouldn't we put, you know, maybe it's not the term eradication, but pest-free is actually the national term, and eradication is the method to get there. So, like I said, not a showstopper today, but inevitably it's facing us somewhere.
We have also signalled in the strategic front end of the document, we've also signalled the alignment of this document with the wider pest-free Auckland aspiration and also predator-free 2050 at that national level. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Now, Councillor Sayers is not here, so Councillor Hills.
Kia ora. Once again, just thank you. I know this is going to be a massive debate, but I think we need to sort of stop beating around the native bush and focus on...
Very good.
I think that the consultation documents and what needs to come to us is actually, we keep focusing on the cost, but it is about investment and what the cost, the future cost is going to be. And it's with a lot of the debates, like the water debate we're going to have as well. Obviously we're constrained financially, but I think we need to be pretty clear what we're sending to people is that it's either investing this much, which you could have bought us a $2 billion program, you could have, but you are trying to bring us into a reasonable space that we could try and afford. But I think if we don't get to this top amount, we're going to look at, you know, species being wiped out. We're going to look at the Kauri dieback spreading even further. We're going to look at the hunuas being ripped apart by possums. So I think we need to be really careful about what we send out, because if you put out 3 options, this will cost you this, inevitably a lot of people are just going to look at the dollars. But it's about showing some pretty stark, you know, this is what you get for this investment, this is what you get, this is what you get. It's not so much about, because, you know, the average person doesn't want to pay more for things, but it's, do you want to look over the back of the, parts of our community and see it all being ripped apart, or the birds no longer come and sing. So I think we need to be a bit bolder and more aggressive with our strategy. It is what do you want? So I'm really excited about the direction, but as we know, this will not be enough, but also we need to be talking to government. I know they're already saying they want to restore some of the DOC funding, they want to be putting more money into Kōrero Dieback, so how can we partner with them? I know we'll be doing that work, but I think if the public saw a willing of us to join up more of that work and not be as piecemeal as maybe we have in the past based on money. But I think it is about what our options are truly going to be in 10 to 20 years of what is left, what we're leaving behind. So yeah, thank you.
Cool. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I just want to congratulate you on your report. It's huge, but it's actually got all the detail there if you wade through it. So I think you've put a lot of time and effort in, and I thank you very much for that. I think the issue that I just want to flag is that it's about Aucklanders understanding the detail of what's in here and their perception. I, for one, I've learnt a lot by reading, the 7 telephone books that you left for us to read. I didn't know there was a Mickey Mouse plant, and I didn't know that Nemo the goldfish caused so much trouble when you stuck him, you didn't want him anymore, and you stuck him in the little stream thinking he would be happily ever after, So I think there also needs to be some education around why you're doing this, and actually that behaviours that people have used for generation, that agapanthus is great, holds the bank up, stick it in and it shall be right, that jasmine smells nice and it will just crawl through and look fantastic. I think there's more to it than just how much it's going to cost and we're trying to get rid of pests. I also want to make the comment that this is going to be up against every infrastructure project, every local board project and everything else at a time of incredible fiscal restraint. And again, around your knowledge and the communications and engagement we're going to have in our communities, I actually think, Mr. Chair, that it would be very useful to have staff from Imogen's team there in those key have your say events to actually really help people understand what's involved.
We'll have to increase the comms budget.
Well, it's not necessarily the comms budget, it's the engagement budget.
Okay.
I just do. I just think that
Take it on board.
that will maybe be something. Yep. Either that or you're going to have to give us some really good bullet points.
We are looking to align with the long-term plan and recognising that there are a large number of those have your say events, but maybe to provide strategic staff support into the ones where we know we're most likely to have people coming along with interest.
That's it. The key
Yep.
areas that might be difficult.
Good suggestion. Taken on board. Councillor Clay? No? Councillor Casey?
I think I just want to echo what Councillor Simpson and Councillor Hills have just said. The protection of our flora and fauna is right up there with swimming in our harbours. I think everybody wants that for the future. And the message that you haven't quite sent out yet, which needs to be sent out yet, is the status quo is going backwards. Now, you said it, but that is absolutely crucial. We cannot maintain the environment with the current level of funding. In fact, even your higher level of funding is not enough. It's not enough. So the message that you are giving Aucklanders is a political message, and I'm not sure how we're going to weave that into the consultation here. How do you get that message? That is a really important message. The funding has to be given. Has to be given. How do you relay that message in the documentation?
Well, yes, and this does align with the long-term plan, so I guess we haven't quite landed that yet, but certainly what we've been putting up into that process is the comparison between that managed decline, as Barry just said, versus protecting prioritised species and places in the fully costed plan.
But there's a difference between using phrases like managed decline and saying the status quo is going backwards. If you fund us to the same level, you will lose more native bush, you will lose more species from Auckland. And that's the bit, I think you need some political help to write your LTP.
That's where G is. At the moment, G is just with both Penny and I, just to have a look at the questions and comments around the long-term plan. That's that one there, and then also I've included, as in through the chair, included a member of the Independent Māori Statutory Board as well. Consultation questions, and I mean, taken on board what you've said.
Minor editorial changes. I think there needs to be some major ones if you're really going to get the public on. I think you've got them on their hearts and minds, but you know, I think Alfie said it. When it comes to being in your rate bill, it's different. So you need to join up the hearts and minds with the fact that this is the cost of it.
Good suggestion. Thank you.
Yep, taken on board. Okay, if there's no further questions, comments, just want to say again, Doctor, to you and the staff, thank you so much for this document. And it's been moved and seconded, so I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Safe swim. There we go. Item 11, just an update. There's a PowerPoint presentation. I will move...
I'll second that, Mr.
Yeah, and second by Councillor Simpson, just to put on the table for discussion. And all yours, Craig, just introduce the team, and we'll get into it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a great pleasure to introduce the wonderful team we've got delivering Safe Swim for Council. On my immediate left, we have Andrew Shollam, who is the project manager, and on his left is Martin Neal, who is the technical lead for the program. And they're just going to give you an update. As you know, we went live on the 3rd of November, so we're now a couple of weeks into the program, so we thought it was, because of the significance of the program, and it's really putting a very important peg in the ground for this council moving forward, so we thought it was timely to come today and give you an update. Okay. So I'll just hand over to Andrew, who's going to lead us through the presentation.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Craig. Tēnā koutou katoa. It is a pleasure to be here, almost a couple of weeks into the Safe Swim program, which, as you'll remember, is a very innovative step for the council. We're shifting from traditional monitoring approaches, which our analysis was finding about 4% of the exceedances in water quality at standards at some of our beaches, to an approach which includes which is based on forecasting, underpinned by models that are informed by long-term data sets, as well as targeted site-specific investigations and validation sampling, as well as sensors on the network. So you can see it's a big shift that we've gone through. Here we go. Okay, just a quick reminder. It's a rather sophisticated program, and I thought I'd just, there's a bit of a lag here, it would seem, in the, just the first one, please. Yeah, this does not seem to be working. That one, thanks. So it's a rather sophisticated program. There's a whole bunch of different data streams coming in from REMU, from meteorological services, LINS, Met Service, etc. We've got a range of modelling programs. We've also got, you'll remember, the involvement of Water Care, Surf Life Saving New Zealand, and the Auckland Regional Public Health Service all feeding into the program. So if we can go to the next slide, please. What we want to do today is just give you an update on how it is performing, giving you some statistics on what we're seeing, and also the nature of the responses. Okay. There's some kind of lag here, I'm sorry. Okay, so the models are up and running. What we're seeing here is just data showing what is actually happening right now. We're seeing they're performing exactly as expected. Like we said, the validation that we're getting is showing that the models are effectively picking up the rainfall, wind, tide, etc., and giving results of water quality at the beaches as per planned. So it's running as planned. Is this going to work?
No, it may be better just with...
Yeah, if you could just flick to the next
one.
Yep,
you just let it know. Thanks.
The other thing I want to let you know is that we do now have all of the, we can confirm we've got all the water care sensor data coming in from their network, and this is just showing a couple of spikes that are coming from what happens when you see an overflow from the water care network. And if we can go to the next slide, please. This is showing how the forecasts and the sensors are working together. So the system is stitched together and operating as planned. So we're really happy. We can assure you we're analysing it every day, every hour. We're watching it as it's going, and is performing as anticipated. So which is great news. So we've got just here. We thought you might want to see a couple of actual examples of what the Safe Swim has picked up at some of our beaches. So we'll start with, we'll come back to that one, thanks Tam.
Oh.
Well, if we just go back to the presentation, please. Yep, we'll stay with Milford South there. Cool. So what we're seeing here is the output, what's sitting behind the models and the map that Safe Swim shows to everybody. That dotted line there is the threshold between what is acceptable swimming and what is not acceptable swimming. So we're seeing since the launch, we're seeing 4 rainfall events, 3 of which prompted exceedances, and that was advised to the public through the website in a highly transparent way. If we could flick to the next one, please, Tam. You can see here is Te Atatu Beach, and that dashed line there is the threshold between what is acceptable to swim in and what is not. And again, we're seeing this is popping up. Now, what's important to let you know is that under the old Safe Swim program, many of these were being missed, and so this information is now being put up transparently. It's generating quite a lot of dialogue, and if we can go to the next one, please. Well, I might flick past this because it's the same story. Next one, and the next one, please. So what we'll do here is we'll jump onto the website in a second, but I want to just let you know, in the 9 days since its launch, and we've had some very kind of low-key promotional activity, here are some statistics. We've had 7,863 page views, so that's 4,373 unique users who've jumped on, almost 6,000 times. There's a slight spike during rain events, which is exactly the kind of culture that we're wanting to see. People going on and checking at risk times. And if we compare that with the last Safe Swim season, we had 13,000 page views across the entire season from November to March. So we're a bit over half of the entire hits for the last entire season in less than 2 weeks. And we haven't actually yet begun the more comprehensive promotional activities that we have planned. Well done. So what we're interpreting this is, along with the amount of engagement that we're getting from the public, that the public is really interested in this and they're paying attention. So I wonder, Tam, if you could go to, we'll go to the safeswim.org website if possible. If you can just refresh it, please. Well, yeah. You might have loaded this earlier in the morning and there's been a forecast update. So this is the live site. So this is showing what's going on around the city at the moment and the region. So I want to just guide you through it a little bit. Okay. Just looking up here to my left, you can see there are some icons that have got a red swimmer on them. For the other people, this one up here. What they are is we're transparent, being quite transparent here about the beaches that have had water quality of such a poor state for a long enough time for them to qualify for long-term warnings. So there's a specific threshold that we respond to there. So we're putting them up on the site now so people can see them.
All my local beaches.
And we're also seeing, perhaps Tam, if you could go into this beach here, which will Okahu Bay. You could just pop into Okahu Bay. Great. So what pops up there on the side, if you could scroll down, please. So bear with me, councillors. So showing, we're obviously not expecting any rain this afternoon, so you've got a nowcast. This is what's happening now, the water quality there. And you can see that you can stroll through and see what's coming up through the day. Now, had more rain been forecast for this afternoon, it would have been a different picture. It would have been showing that water quality would have been getting poorer usually. So that's just a demonstration. The site is working. The models are operating, the validation is coming through and showing that we're getting good accuracy. The platform is nice and stable and performing as we'd anticipated. Another thing that what I'd like to do is show you, if we can pop out, Tam, to Bethel's Beach here. That one up here.
Top left.
And if you click onto beach details, that tab there, please. Cool. And if you slide down and keep going, you'll notice that this puts up all the information about patrol times. If there's actually an active patrol, like a beach surf lifesaving patrol, an icon will come up on the beach and let you know. Similarly, icons will pop up, and we actually, when we were doing the launch, the surf lifesavers had spotted a shark out in the harbour earlier, so they put a launch up just as Dean was standing there with the TV crew filming. And a little alert popped up, which is a little exclamation mark over the beach, and it said, you know, shark spotted. So the system is working.
It wasn't Dean.
Oh, thank you. No, working nicely. One of the things that we're getting in some of the questions coming through from the media is showing just a little. The media and the public are just start taking a little bit of time to get to grips with the fact that we're shifting from a monitoring to a forecasting program. And so some people have been saying, how can you tell what the water quality is going to be? And there's, you know, just a sense of, you know, needing to take a bit of time to understand the system that underpins this. And I wondered, I don't know if there's anything that, Martin, you wanted to add on that point.
We've done extensive validation testing of the models over the past 6 to 9 months, and we're continuing to do so at the moment. It was too late for this presentation, but I got some results this morning from validation we did last week, which was trying to test whether model forecasts were correct. And on first look, then they do look all like they were giving us the right type of information. The model predicted some exceedances of the guidelines across the region on the 8th of November after a rain event. And we've got some validation modelling come through, monitoring samples come through this morning. About a dozen beaches all showed information that would support a red alert mode at those beaches, or amber or red alert. So we've done extensive validation, and we're continuing to do extensive validation as we go forward to make sure that the models are giving us the best possible information.
Cool.
Now, just Tam, if I could ask you one more thing while we're on this map. If you could orient it back up to central Auckland. Sorry, to the back to the city, to the CBD. Yeah. Just slide the map back down.
I think if you drag it.
If you just click and drag the map back down, so the CBD is central. Yeah, cool. Thank you. So one thing that was really interesting from the model's performance was this area here, we know that there's a combined network, and there's quite a lot of issues in here. You've been talking about this a lot. We had an instance on the 8th, as Martin was talking about, where a lot of rainfall was anticipated in this area in the Central Isthmus. We were expecting 25 mils, and we were expecting to arrive at about 5 in the morning. And actually we got about 6 mils, and it arrived something like 10:30 or something like that. And what that meant was it arrived, there was less sewage being driven into the harbour, and it arrived on an outgoing tide with an outgoing, with a very fresh westerly wind. So it was blowing the sewage plumes off the coast, and the model went green, and a lot of people were they were confused by that it was showing green at that time because it was raining at 10 when it went green. But it was because of those other factors that the plumes were being pushed out. What the model then showed is after the rain moved on, it was actually in the afternoon and evening that the risk was there. It was once the tide had turned in as the wind dropped, the plumes got blown back in, and that's when the risk was, which was when it was sunny, which was when no one was remembering that it was raining, and so the mindset was you could go for a swim. So what it is showing is it's actually we're going to have to change our behaviours. So there's a little bit of transition required here, which we expect, and we're just working through that. So Tam, if you could pop back to the presentation, please. Cool. And if you could go to the next few slides. We could go past that one and put that there just in case there was a connectivity issue. Could you just slide back one, please? So you can see here as well on those, for each beach, you've got information about the beach, you've got a series of photos about the beach, you've got whether it's patrolled, you've got the general hazards. So we're trying to...
That side as well.
Oh, this side as well.
Yep.
So information about the beach, the patrol hours, the general hazards and so on. So it's trying to it's providing an integrated platform. So we could go to the next slide, please. The signs that have been erected at the approaches to the beaches covered by the Safe Swim program have all been installed. The Great Barrier local board asked us to hold off while they had a bit of a discussion with us about integrating it with some of their other signs. We're talking actively with the rangers about working with them about integrating it with their signage programs. Okay, could you go to the next one, please? These signs are now out at the surf clubs and being put up by the surfers, the surf lifesavers. So you'll start seeing those on the beach. They've got little information cards that they're handing out as well. Next sign, please. And we have a digital sign installed at Mission Bay, which some members were present at the unveiling of it. So this digital sign, it's live. This entire screen here is live, and it's got a tailored format of the website. It's showing the beaches around the beach that you're at. So for instance, if you're at Mission Bay and you might find at Okahu Bay, let's say at Mission Bay it's green, or it's red, and at Okahu Bay it's green, you might choose to just go around and swim over there. It's providing information on all the alerts, and there's information here rolling through on tide, etc. And that's working well. There's a series of, there have been 6 beaches that our investigations have found that the water quality is not so great at. In fact, poor enough to justify erecting long-term warnings. And we've offered to go and speak with each of those local boards. We've sent them memos to explain it, and we've offered to take them through it. We're meeting with the Waitakere board tomorrow to discuss the issues there at the beach and talk about the programs that are in place to get to the bottom of them and deal with those issues.
Okay.
And just a reminder that we are working actively as a partnership on this one, which is really helping because we're getting incredibly good data from Watercare coming through, and Surf Lifesaving, we're working with them about how the public is engaging with this, and we're learning a lot about what does and doesn't work in terms of signage. So there will be evolution in the program in terms of the way that we communicate it, the kind of signs we put up. Thank you.
Cool bananas. Craig, you want any closing remarks and
then
questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So having got the tool launched, obviously for me we're thinking about next steps already. So at the moment we've got 84 beaches covered, of which I think 69 are currently subject to the program and the balance are permanent red at the moment. That doesn't actually match all the beaches that Auckland is used for swimming. It's probably more like 200 or 300 locations. Now that we're going to a modelling approach, we want to get those 300 locations up on the website as quickly as we can. An example would be the steps down at the Viaduct Harbour where people swim off those steps. We want to turn that into a beach site. Not only that, we will only have clean harbours if we have clean streams. So the idea is to treat the streams as a number of virtual beaches and actually put warning signs in the streams as well. Not because we expect people to be swimming in the streams, it's going to highlight the water quality issues we have in our streams, because without clean streams we're never ever going to end up with clean harbours. And so we may well end up with another 100 or so stream sites, which will be called virtual swimming sites. That would be the plan anyway. It's ambitious, but we have to have a stretch target.
Yep.
So by this time next year, instead of seeing 84 icons on there, I'm hoping we might see up to 400 icons on the website. It's got the team a bit twitchy at the moment because it's an ambitious goal, but we have to, if we're going to win the hearts and minds of Aucklanders to spend the money that's required to fix the problem, we have to identify the problem in very black and white terms. And so we've been very open and transparent with the communities, and that's our plans.
Okay, let's wait for the debate to happen. Okay, Councillor Simpson and then Councillor Cooper.
Look, thank you very much for your work on this. It's absolutely outstanding, and I just want to tell you that the sign at Mission Bay has been a huge success. It's been the only thing I don't like is I've had so many calls asking me, you know, why on a nice sunny day that they can't swim. But my question to you is, which is actually very good for you, my question for you is around the feedback you've had in the 9 days since the launch. And what I'm interested to know is, because we're trialling the sign at Mission Bay, I'm interested to know if the sign has driven more people to the website, or people coming from the, going to the website looking at beaches that have no signage. I mean, is that part of the trial? It's part of the trial information that you're gathering. So obviously at Mission Bay, you see, when you look at the sign at Mission Bay, just for the benefit of others, you see four beaches. You see right through to St Heliers, Koe, Mission Bay and Okahu, just in one swoop. So you know that those beaches are being potentially looked at by people who've maybe seen the sign, as opposed to other beaches. Do you have you got that data? I mean, as opposed to knowing that this many hits, what are they looking at?
Yeah, we can, at the moment I only pulled out the high level ones, but we can drill into low level detail which beaches are they going to, so we can pull that up as part of the analytics down the track. We'll also be doing, this is with REMU, it's probably once there are more people on the beaches, we'll be doing observation and intercept surveys at the beaches, so we'll be asking people at Mission Bay, for instance, around their behaviour. Did this drive you to check the site, etc. So there are those. There's the website analytics, but then there's also the actual direct interaction.
So just on that supplementary, if I may, so could you just confirm the length of the trial for that sign and the things that you're doing over and above just having it there?
So at the moment, I don't think there's an end date in place for for instance, if it didn't work, if the community didn't like it, then it would be something that we'd talk about pulling it out if it didn't work, right? But there isn't a drop dead time in there at the moment. The trial is running for this summer period, we're calling that trial, and the observation surveys, the intercept surveys, which is where you actually stop and ask questions, but then also written surveys, will be running January, February, March, and then the analysis should be available April, May, and then we'd be making decisions then about what we need to do and bringing recommendations back.
Okay, so we're not seeing another electronic sign at a beach for at least 6 or 8 months?
With one exception, Panuku would love to see a sign at St Mary's Bay, and they're prepared to fund it.
For the same money.
So so that is coming out of a Panuku budget, so that sign is going ahead at the moment. Okay. The reason also is that Council has a major capital investment program going on at St Mary's Bay, and so that sign will help raise the public awareness, and obviously with planning around with the acceleration of the Skypath program as well. There's just such massive patronage around that waterfront that we think it's a great way to elicit even more public awareness of the program as a whole.
And so you're not thinking about putting one at the viaduct over summer? Because it's not a beach, right? Is that the reason?
Look, at this stage, the thinking around the viaduct and the steps at the viaduct is quite new. I think realistically, we just have to, the signs are not cheap, and so we just need to maybe just evaluate how the signs are performing, what the public reaction is before we commit to a far wider rollout. And by then, of course, the LTP process will have gone through, so we'll know with a little bit more certainty what our funding base is going forward.
And just finally, if I may, some people have asked me, because it's real time and there's so much there, you know, is it possible for that one sign to cover things like smoking to be added to that sign, just so... I saw it. Okay.
That big.
Sorry, Councillor. Yeah, sorry, that was something I noticed too, but it was a very tiny sticker down the bottom.
Instead of flashing up
yeah,
every
where a
now and
toddler
again.
could see it, but maybe not an adult. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to roll out those signs after the policy and implementation plan's been adopted. It does, very good. I had a couple of questions. One is, I mean, when you look at, I mean, just looking at the website, it's absolutely outstanding. It's so information rich. It's, you could spend all day kind of researching, you know, all the beaches. One question, in terms of that, those sorts of, I suppose the northern Manukau where you've got all, over where Councillor Clow lives, you know, your French bays, your wood bays, all of those, it is highly polluted. Is that a lot to do with the sort of septic tank kind of issues around there, do you think? Or the just not good flushing?
I can comment on that.
Pardon the pun.
When we talked to the committee a month or two ago, I talked about the fact that when these beaches attract a long-term permanent warning, we switch over into a different type of monitoring and investigation. So we're currently, through Craig's department, we're doing some work where we're looking at the inflows to those beaches and trying to identify the sources of the contamination. Yeah. Once we know where they're coming from, that's when we can start having discussions about how best to manage them.
There's been a lot of work done in the lagoons, which we're still struggling with, but I think it's quite a wake-up call there. The other question I had is around partnering with Surf Lifesavers, and we know they get, you know, relatively very little money from our ARAFA money fund, unfortunately, and now I see they're doing another role, you know, which they have a huge role in the region. Now they're doing something else for us, and so are they being? Is there any funding for the kind of work they're doing, of putting up signs? You know, sharing all their information, or no, probably.
There's not additional funding in this program. It was something that they were voluntarily happy, you know, to offer. I think for them, the fact that there's an integrated website now that allows their Marine Rescue Centre to put up alerts at all those beaches, so that people could look at it before they go to the beaches, was quite attractive to them.
Yeah, and good to see the links to the partners as well. But thank you, it's really great work.
Councillor Darby.
Thank you. This is really great work, and I commend the team for working on this. It's applying an intelligence, I think, your own, of course, but also the intelligence of technology to solving solutions, and I think that is just the absolute way of the future. And then, of course, we'll get to artificial intelligence, and then we won't need your intelligence. But, Chair, there's a question mark on Muriwai at the moment. What is that question mark?
There are 3 question marks on, there's Muriwai, Kareatahi and Pakari. So they, at the start of the program, weren't in the formal Safe Swim program, but in negotiations with Surf Lifesaving. They're obviously beaches that are patrolled and are really important. So we're bringing them into the program. At the moment, we haven't, there was monitoring that's been done at some of those beaches, but not enough for us to develop models that are sufficiently predictably robust. So we have them up there on the platform so that Surf Lifesaving can use it to put up alerts around the conditions at those beaches. But it's a work in progress around the water quality side. Martin, if you...
Yeah, so those 3 beaches are high on our priority list to do some targeted sampling and get a better understanding of what's going on in terms of water quality.
Did you say Karikari and Karikari's...
Kareatahi.
Kareatahi, down the way there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll find that in a minute.
Southwest.
Sorry, just in terms of the narrative, and it's really good you have a little bit of information about each beach, you're slowly building that. 'Cause some beaches don't have that. That's just work in progress as well?
That's right. We worked with Surf Lifesaving on that. They've got a risk and recreation assessor, an independent accredited assessor, and we worked with them. And so it is a work in progress, but we've put up as much as we could, as quickly as we could.
Okay, and last question is, just in terms of what you in that beach details, it's like it explains what the facilities are, but is there opportunity to actually say what you can't do at beaches as well, e.g. the smoking? But I understand that a number of these beaches, and I think still at Cheltenham, for example, we have got a rahui on shellfish collection. I'm sure, I think at Okahu as well, and there's probably others. So not for health reasons, but for sustainability reasons or cultural reasons. Is there opportunity to explore that in the summary, in that narrative on beach details?
Yeah, the short answer is absolutely, and we have had discussions with mana whenua through the Healthy Waters mana whenua Kaitiaki Forum and the Watercare Kaitiaki Forum who are coming together around the potential for using Safe Swim as a platform for rahui. There's, in discussions with them, we decided that we would take a slower path on that. We just step through it. There's a lot of agencies, there's a lot of people that need to be involved, so we didn't want to rush, and they were quite comfortable with that.
Thank you very much. Great work.
Okay. Councillor Walker.
Sure. Just a couple of questions on next steps. We're going to be having the signs up for the beaches, which is great. Are we going to be advancing to signs at the discharge points where we know in wet weather flows, sometimes even arguably dry weather flows, we've got sewage discharges into streams and so on? So are we going to be locating signs in those points?
One of the things that became really evident when we went around all of these beaches, we went and photographed them and reviewed them all, was that there is an issue that the council will need to come to grips with at some stage around signage. There are some inconsistent signage. There's a little bit of clutter. It's anecdotally, people are telling us it's kind of turning them off, creating a bit of fatigue. You lose the message. We also found lots of signs from the historic councils still in place. So there's a piece of work that needs to be done, and I think the question that you raised needs to be tackled as part of that analysis. But we do, I think, need a comprehensive and integrated solution. We do need to work with parks, and we need to work with the environment, emergency management, as well as Healthy Waters and others.
For you, Mr. Chair, my question in part goes to health and safety, where we know that there are known hazards at those locations, and that people, the general public, kiddies, others that might be swimming in a stream or wading in a stream are exposed to a hazard that we know exists, and there's no sign up.
Okay.
So I think as part of the expansion of the program, where we have the issue, as we currently have, of permanent red signs, there will need to be more signs put at those specific locations. We're working through with Watercare at the moment because obviously a number of those signs relate to not wastewater overflows from the pump stations, but targeted wastewater overflows at specific points where the network currently is designed to overflow.
And part of my reasoning for asking this, Mr. Chair, is if the public are familiar with how widespread the issue is, it drives the investment because they will say, we want this to be dealt with. The other question I've got just goes to next steps around citizen science. While I appreciate we've got a model here, increasingly now you can have E. coli tests that are next to nothing in terms of cost, and citizen science initiatives where we could have people, public of Auckland, at beaches, at streams, feeding into a database directly, and that exists now across a whole range of citizen science initiatives. Are you proposing to add that very good information to what is here a modelling-based approach.
Yep, certainly it's something we have considered. There are a number of things around citizen science and other aspects that we could bring to the programme, but we were working with a clearly defined scope to make sure we hit the launch date of 1st of November. And then the next steps, certainly, we're open to consideration of talking to citizen science groups. Hopefully we can get beach care groups, which is an initiative that runs across other countries, where you get a group of local people that take ownership of the beach, not just for water quality testing, but for a whole range of different purposes. So definitely, yes, it's on our list of things to look at.
Thank you. Councillor Quicks, and then if there's no comments, I'll put the recommendation.
Yeah, just very briefly, I think this is a really good initiative, Mr. Chair. I'd like everybody else, I think, around the room, looked at the website and been very impressed by it. The only comment I would make is that on the Bucklands Beach Peninsula, you've got little bucks and big bucks mixed up. Big bucks is in the north, and little bucks is in the south. And you know, while it's a small thing, if one of them ever becomes polluted and the other one is safe, it could create some confusion. So just draw your attention.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further comments, it's been moved and seconded. I will move. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Look, I've just been made aware that why, but somebody will explain why. Yep. We have to go back and recommit item 10 because the recommendations had to be put individually. My question was why as well, but because we had that. Thank you so much. Sorry, swim team. Swim team. Yeah, thanks so much, Craig. Yeah, look, I mean, but this is why we ended up having, and I kept that summary on the PowerPoint up there in regards to what each of the recommendations were. But if it has to, well, let's do it. So, Barry, can you explain just a little bit further why? Because, like I said, it was self-explanatory when we ended up putting up there with that PowerPoint that was presented, but can you?
My apologies, Mr. Chair. We've received some legal advice afterwards and apologies for this occurring, that each one of those, A through to G, I think it is, needed to ensure that we did things properly, should actually be approved sequentially rather than in a block. That's the legal advice we've received to just manage some risk around that. A stepped process. Yeah, look, and my apologies for that not being clear.
It is what it is. It's just that it was, never mind. I just a wee bit disappointing, but look, I'm just going to recommit item 10. All those, well, I'll move it. Second, Councillor Cashmore, Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Against? Carried. I will then now move recommendation A. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. I will now put recommendation B. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. C.
Aye.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. D. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. E.
Aye.
All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Aye.
F. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. G. Don't know why this one has to put. We'll do it. G. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Get a new lawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a lawyer who's now happy.
They just build you another.
Never mind. Hey, look.
Did you do it now?
I just want to.
I
just want to let you know. Look, there's only two items. One of them is obviously, from my perspective anyway, something that'll just go through. Councillor Walker's one, and the trip to Taiwan, and then the most important one is the confidential one, and that's the three that we have. We've also got the confidential briefing. So I'm in your hands in regards to it. Lunch is just around the corner, but I want to push everything through. Then we have lunch. There's nothing else afterwards. You then, as the members of this committee, have your day ahead of you. So I'm going to do that, but I think we need, for those that want to have and I'll allow Councillor Walker just to get all his presentation full, just to sort of have a little go-shoot to the wharepaku break, please. So I'm going to just move 5 minutes. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Wharepaku stop. that particular item. Second, Councillor Clow. And so I now invite Councillor Walker with your presentation. As you know, Councillor Walker, you've got 5 minutes with 5 minutes of questions. So it's all yours.
Happy to move.
Oh, it's done already.
Don't be ridiculous.
I was just trying to do what he did.
Good morning, councillors. In
Got it.
In late September, early October, I attended a couple of conferences in Taiwan.
Councillor Quicks, please.
I didn't travel business class. There was no cost to council. The costs were met by ECLI, which is the organisation that council is a member of around global sustainability. On the part of some Taiwanese cities and from myself. This was a trip that I'd been planning for between 2 and 3 years, and primarily that was around an eco-mobility conference and festival in Taiwan, in Kaohsiung. So you can see there, that's Taiwan. I hadn't been to Taiwan before. One of the things that was evident to me was how much we can make of the relationship with Taiwan around what they're doing because of the similarities to New Zealand. So almost all the cities are coastal. They're all very advanced. We had a lot to learn. The picture on the left is one particular point of difference that goes to transport, and that's the number of scooters they've got. So that is a major problem that they've got in Asia, particularly Taiwan.
Next one.
First of all, in New Taipei, I attended a small conference on climate change and city transformation that was very productive. There were a number of cities there that were members of ECLI and elsewhere. And that gave me an opportunity to check out New Taipei, which is very close to Taipei. In Kaohsiung, they've got fairly advanced public transport. That picture that you can see up the top is a dome of light that they have in one of their rail stations. And they had a very comprehensive and very large docked bike share scheme, as they had in Taipei and New Taipei. And to give you an idea of the scale, I think in Taipei they've got 14,000 docked bikes and a very large number in Kaohsiung. So they are well ahead of us. There's been a huge take-up. But one of the things I'd comment, the bikes take up a lot of space. And one of the things that you'll hear me asking when there are presentations around our transformations that go to transport and design is how much space are we going to need for the bike share schemes that we will inevitably have. You need space for a number of bikes. Slide. So eco-mobility. Eco-mobility is a one-word concept that essentially covers off the whole multimodal approach involving walking, cycling, using public transport, using apps, car sharing, and so on. It is a concept and a set of principles and strategy that quite a number of cities have taken up, and I think it has real merit for this council and particularly Auckland Transport. And the Congress themes were around livability, sharing and intelligence. As I say, it's got particular relevance to Auckland. It wasn't just a conference, it's very much hands-on. So part of Kaohsiung, the historic sector, was closed to cars for a month. So it's a direct experience where you can go and see how it's working, and the whole community, the whole city was turned on to it. Next slide. Thanks, Tam. So you had the participation of mayors, councillors, people in the community. There was a massive parade to kick the thing off. There were workshops, that's me, at the right, at a workshop, a very practical workshop around looking at a geographical area and how you would apply mobility as a service to that area, in a very cost-effective way. Next slide. I also took the opportunity to visit with all of the city governments, Taichung, which is a sister city of ours. So I met with the Deputy Mayor, as I did with the Deputy Mayors of New Taipei, Taipei, Kaohsiung, and the mayors in most instances as well. I went to a school, Shangxi, that's interested in partnering with a school in Auckland. I was also hosted by Taitang, which is a very large group in Taipei and Taiwan that is into electronics, into a number of things that are relevant to Auckland. There was an agricultural show I attended, and I make the observation in terms of airports that without exception the connectivity with the airports was by way of heavy rail, and Taichung was in the process of building a heavy rail connection to their airport, so I checked that out as well. Okay. So in summary, it was incredibly productive on my part. I got a lot out of it, and what I'm in the process of doing now is feeding information directly to people within Council, Auckland Transport and elsewhere that can benefit. And happy to take any questions. Okay, councillors.
Look, I just wanted to sort of acknowledge the trip and also the presentation, Wayne. So thank you for that. And I am going to open it up for any questions. Councillor Watson, followed by Councillor Sayers.
Thanks, Wayne. Just the one thing you said right at the outset there was that the various Taiwanese cities are keen to collaborate or to work with Auckland. What specifically, what did that kind of offer entail?
Well, if we take bike share schemes, so their bike share schemes are up and running. They're very successful. They're leading technology. They also have bike manufacturers such as Giant, and they said we would like to bring this to Auckland. We'd like to do it. So I met with people in Giant. I met with people in the city councils that were interested in doing that, interested in coming here and helping us. That was one example. Similarly across light rail, heavy rail, other initiatives around smart cities. So I've got invites for our mayor to attend a smart city conference in Taipei and also a Flora Expo in Taichung. So they're interested in working with us on things.
Well, hopefully we'll take it up.
Councillor Sayers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Wayne. My question is just around you mentioned you're feeding back into other departments and including Auckland Transport. What's the interest or pickup and enthusiasm that you're getting back from them?
It's early days yet, but I met with people in Auckland Transport that are doing work around cycling and mobility. And I explained, for example, the benefit of the workshop that I experienced, which was incredibly low cost, involving people to do a mapping exercise for mobility in their community. And I said, look, we could pick this up directly, and the short answer was yes, they were interested, and yes, they were interested in pursuing some of the contacts around the bike share schemes.
Councillor Simpson and then Councillor Cooper to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your presentation, Wayne. I've got a couple of things. First of all, on the bike share scheme, do they have permanent docking stations over there? I noticed that the one that's arrived here, which was originally just arrived and wasn't regulated, you sort of can leave them anywhere. So I just want to know if that is a designated docking scheme.
The answer is yes. The bike share schemes were permanent, so they were permanent docking schemes. They were used by a form of smart card, like say our Hop card, And the reason for the dock schemes was because of experience. Otherwise, you had bikes literally all over the place.
Which is happening here. Okay. And the second one, look, you've spoken at a very high level, but I'm interested when you get a minute of the list of suggestions or learnings you're giving to the Auckland Council departments and CCOs for us to adopt.
Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Simpson.
And Councillor Cooper?
Thank you. And people will be pleased to know that our regulatory staff have been working with the company that brought their bikes in, and that's getting sorted, and they'll have agreements and parameters within which to operate. Wayne, I was just wondering, I mean, I've had quite a lot to do with the Cultural and Economic Office Taipei across the road, but in the last term, the mayoral office dissuaded me from that because of, you know, how the international scene is. Is this mayoral office supportive of our relationship with the Taipei office? Because that's something that's always been a bit, you know, tricky. Because it would be good if our mayoral office was supportive of those relationships.
Well, in this instance, I had support from a number of people. I had support from global partnerships.
No.
I had support from the Mayor's office of Heslop, who I met with, and also John Morrow from the Chief Sustainability Office. So
it's good to hear.
I gave 2 presentations, and those presentations were assisted by them. And obviously, I've reported back, had a debriefing with global partnerships and also with the Mayor's office and John Morrow. So I've done the best I can on my part to foster good relationships.
Thank you.
Cool. Councillor Casey, I think you're the last.
I just wanted to know if they wear helmets.
No. And it is interesting that that is an item that was covered off in some of the presentations, because the research in a number of overseas cities is that from a health and safety perspective, overall, it's actually safer not to have the helmets, in the sense that you get much more participation.
And my second question also relates to bikes. Do they have separate protected cycleways?
Yeah. And the answer is yes. A number of them, and building many, many of them. And also, not just push bikes, but in Taiwan, they're going to be actively moving to e-bikes, electric bikes. And of course, that is one of the requirements that we've got in Auckland because of our hills.
I just want to again thank you, Wayne, for your presentation. Yes,
Chairman, just in terms of that, with your permission, could we add the words receive and thank Councillor Wayne Walker for his presentation?
Of course. Yeah. Of course. We'll just wait for Sonia to put that in. So in light of that...
Thank you for the addition, Councillor Quacks.
I will move... Oh, sorry, it's been moved and seconded. I will put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Item 13, I'll put it on the table for discussion. Second?
Yes.
Councillor Simpson, it is to receive the information report. I take it that everybody's read it, but there is a question. Yes, Kathy?
Yeah,
sorry, Councillor Casey.
There's a line item in here about friendly city, and I wondered how that matches up with the age-friendly city that came through my committee and has a resolution behind it. So it's not on the work programme. Is it in the work programme of this friendly city line item?
Yeah, I'm just going to sort of see if there's any staff to answer that.
It's in here somewhere.
Yeah, if not, is there, have you got any issues around them coming back to you, Councillor Casey, with your question?
No worries.
Okay. It was a recommendation from her committee.
No, from the old.
Oh, from the old committee.
Last term.
Okay. Okay. We'll get something back to you, Councillor Casey, if that's okay.
Yep. Friendly city. It's on page 253.
Yep.
Line item 3.
Okay then. We'll get somebody to come back to you. So it's. Oh no, I'm just sort of hearing some shuffling. So you want to get back to Councillor Casey? Then at least I can move the recommendation if you haven't got an answer now.
Just come back to it.
Yep,
We'll come
okay.
back.
Look, I'm good. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against, carried. So I will ensure that somebody comes back to you, Councillor Casey. Okay, I'm going to move into... Yeah, we've done already. Yeah, it was okay. It was Councillor Simpson. And then we're going into confidential. So I'm going